oxygen, and how he explores and the friend he finds down there, which just happens to be an octopus. We thought when we first turned it on and saw it was a documentary, I said, oh, let's move on. I need a story. And all of a sudden it just captured us and we just couldn't get away from it. It was just wonderful. Really a feel-good kind of story. And then the other one we did on Easter, Scott, you will really appreciate this. I found a 1973 movie of Jesus Christ Superstar. It is wonderful. You see them coming in their entrance to the stage, and the stage, by the way, it's all done outdoors, is a bus load of people coming to this area. And it's in Jordan or somewhere around there, big desert area, and they find these old Roman ruins. And they do this whole show. It's low budget, I'm sure. This whole show from this ruins. And it is just, it was just absolutely wonderful. Your sister, of course, we sang most of the songs. And her daughters were wondering what we were doing. And so we were able to teach a little of Christ's story to them at that point, since one of them knew nothing. So it was just a very nice Easter day with that. And I highly recommend that 1973 because of the fact they wear the clothes and everything, got the big bell-bottom trousers. And it was just a nice go back to that period of time to watch that.
That's great.
Little opera.
What you guys don't know is it was one of the 8-tracks in our camper van. And so my sister and I know the music quite well.
Every Sunday when we traveled, that's what we listened to.
We used to drive up and down the Alcan listening to Jesus Christ Superstar.
Jesus Christ Superstar. Mm-hmm. Anyway,
I have my 1973 that was made. Yeah, that was my grade 12 year. And I was in a choir group that, we...
Wrong thing to do.
And it's my Easter movie, along with my Christmas movie, which is White Christmas. And then there's the Sound of Music for my birthday. So that's my 3 musicals.
That's wonderful. Where does Hamilton come into your...
I didn't really
for Bill's
get
birthday.
Hamilton. I started it, and I was having some hearing aid issues, and I couldn't get into it. But on the other hand, I could sing every word to Jesus Christ Superstar.
Yeah. I could sing every word whether I knew it or not. So, there was
Bill's more along the lines of Good Morning Vietnam.
Oh, yeah.
That's my music.
For your birthday.
That works. Anyway, I just had to share that because I knew Scott would really appreciate it. And I know a little more about how Scott learned his religious background or lack of.
So funny. And as far as Hamilton goes, Emily would be able to sing most of the words to Hamilton. She's a Hamilton maniac.
Okay.
Hey, Matt's finally joined us.
I'm having trouble getting connected on my computer. I have to do it on my phone.
I'm noticing I'm having horrible technical problems on my end. Everything was working great up till a little while ago, and now it's just bloop, 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 bloop.
I fell off the meeting for a while.
Mine froze, and then all I could get was a blank page.
That's my boy.
What was that? Things are seeming very garbled at the moment. I'm not hearing very clearly people talking. Everybody looks frozen now.
That was Jim talking to his dog.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
And as far as Hamilton
Guys,
goes,
I thought the
Emily
mic
would
was
be able to
off.
sing most of the words to Hamilton. She's a
Say hello.
maniac.
Dog.
Say hi.
Hey.
Oh,
Chester and Jim are both there. I started watching Succession, and Chester had said something about language. I I'm waiting to get more about the mergers and everything because those people are just plumb weird.
Well,
Yep.
they're a family.
Well, I guess there's that.
Is that how that works?
They are a dysfunctional family.
I found it entertaining, and from a business standpoint, it had some real accuracies in it. But, I enjoyed it.
Yeah. I'm about 8 episodes in, but yeah, there's some pretty wacky people in that family. But like you say, it's family.
I think
Yeah,
it's seasons. I can't remember now. But
Anytime I'm in the same room, I walk by it and I say, "You still watching that shit?"
wait till you get to the last hour and you see that yacht.
Oh,
Yeah.
Well, the house is pretty impressive.
Think Paul Allen.
Yeah, it may have been Paul Allen's. Who knows?
It wouldn't surprise me.
Right. There's probably rented because nobody has that yacht for a movie. So they just rented it from somebody.
They probably rented everything, including tuxedos. But
Yeah.
anyway,
Succession.
I just enjoyed the series.
Do we have any other recommendations? Recommendations aren't just movies and TV. They can be websites or applications you've been using.
Books.
Books. God forbid one of us is reading a
the
book.
Nightingale.
Yeah. God forbid.
I've been watching Hunters. It's about Nazi hunters in New York with Al
Hunter.
Pacino. Hunters
Yeah.
with Al.
That's a TV series on Prime, isn't it?
It is.
Al Pacino?
Uh-huh.
Oh.
They're like a covert Jewish group hunting down the last of Nazi offenders. Or did I say that right? Offensive Nazis? I think you get the idea.
Offensive Nazi offenders.
What's the name of it?
Hunters.
I remember
that's-
we really enjoyed it. It's been around at least for a year, but maybe a little longer. But I remember we really enjoyed it when we watched it.
And that's a series or a movie?
It's a
series.
series. Sorry, Judy.
Oh, it's a series on Prime Video.
And an easy recommendation. I was just looking through my watch list, seeing if there's anything. You know, I don't know. You know, you guys know I do a lot of superhero and sci-fi stuff. But there's weird stuff happening in the DC superhero world. And they've got these stories that are called Elseworld stories. And they fall way outside the realm of a superhero story. And I have been watching this series, it's on the 2nd season, called Pennyworth. And Pennyworth is the background of Alfred Pennyworth, the butler of Bruce Wayne, the Batman. And it is great. It is after World War II, mafia style story. And what it is it's just filling in the gaps of what Alfred's life was like before he came to work for the Waynes and raise the child that would become the Batman. There are no superheroes in this story. There's no superpowers. There's no science fiction going on. This is really a story about war heroes that have come back to build their legacy, to find their fortune, and the kind of problems they get into. And Elseworld is a label that DC gives to their comic books that don't follow their traditional canon. And so these are like what if stories. What if Alfred was this special forces guy when he was a young guy and has this whole background working as protection and mafia and club owner. And it's just been a really good show. It's not a hard recommendation. And it's almost frustrating that it's tied to superhero property, because I know that turns some people off, the idea that it's not a superhero show at all. It's called Pennyworth. And somebody's going to say, where are you watching it? And I can't remember. I bet I'm watching it on Streamio or Kodi. I bet that's what I'm watching it on. But it's an easy recommendation. It is really well done.
I was watching 60 Minutes this last weekend, and they had the story of 6 Tongan teenagers who stole a boat and ran away from a boarding school. Anyways, they got marooned on an island, and they were there for 15 months. And the reason I found it really interesting was that there's now a writer out of New York who's writing about humankind. And he's basically looking at, the premise of The Lord of the Flies was that these boys would get very selfish, and they would hurt each other and all this. And what these 6 boys found was that they stayed together and they worked together, and they survived 15 months on their own because of the way they treated each other and their love for each other. And
this is a documentary you're talking about?
Well, the 60 Minutes was an article about the boys, but it also led me to this guy that writes about humankind. So I've ordered the book. I want to see what all he has to do with it. But he basically wants to debunk the ideas that humans have at their core a negative kind of thing. And he feels that deep down we're all actually striving to work together.
I hear what you're saying. Like there's that premise that if we don't have our structures and our rules, chaos reigns. That society collapses. We all become animals. And give into those natures, like Lord of the Flies.
Right. So
there's an interesting ending to this thing too. They are rescued. Some Australian finds them and brings them home. And they get to the shore and they're immediately arrested for stealing the boat.
They thought they'd be welcomed back into civilization, and no, they were in jail or whatever. Anyways, the guy paid their fine, or paid the boat owner, and everything was settled. And the guy that rescued them has remained best friends with one of them. And it was a really nice little 60 Minutes story. The last one is always a human interest kind of thing.
What is there a name, or if I wanted to go find the 60 Minutes story, how would I find it?
Well, it's Humankind is the name of the book that this author is written. Bergman.
Probably, Scott. You just search 60 Minutes Tonga shipwreck or something, and it'll pop.
Yeah, the Tongan. And it was the date was last Sunday. What was?
This was just on. Okay.
Yeah.
I've heard this story before.
Well, I missed it. It was in the 60s. It was 1960. These 6 boys were lost at sea, and they had their funerals. They thought they were gone, and they came back. So.
We had a native tribe up here, one of the Tlingit Haida. One group, their boys had gotten into trouble. I think wasn't there 4, Scott, something like that. And the elders decided to send them off to an island to stay for a period of time rather than going. They were off to reform school, and they said, no, let's put them on the island. And it was really hard because they didn't give them much assistance. They just put them out there to kind of survive according to what the boys have to say. Now, the elders felt like they, I think, had kind of prepared them. but it wasn't more than a month or so, and somebody had to come in and get his braces adjusted, and then another one had to come in and have a physical, and then somebody got sick and had to come in. So I don't think that particular situation worked to the advantage of curing the boys of bad behavior. Maybe, I don't know, but it seemed like we never quite ended that. We never felt like it was ended. The boys just all of a sudden were back in normal society again.
So they were what, excommunicated from the community?
No, it was a punishment. It wasn't, an excommunication usually is a permanent thing, I think. I think these guys, it was to be a lesson for them to try and survive on their own and how hard it is to do now. Yeah, especially
that seemed to be part of the culture of the natives here on the island too. In British Columbia, that people we have this tendency to separate bad people and put them in prisons or whatever, separate them out. Whereas the natives, they just shamed them, and they were there and they had to be there, and everybody knew who they were. But if it got beyond so that it was a bigger problem, then they were just expelled from the community and went out to the Great Forest, which was shared with other tribes. And there are stories of them getting their act together but not coming back to the tribe they were with, but going and trying to associate with another tribe. So
yeah, wonder if they had braces.
This is time before braces that were in history,
Yeah, well, I'm sure that's what was done up here too. But I don't think this was supposed to be a permanent punishment for those boys. I don't think they were supposed to be banned or anything like that.
It was just a vision quest.
Yeah, I guess.
Well, it is interesting to think about. You think about those kinds of cultures as being so communal, so interdependent on each other, that to punish would be to take that away, that structure away from you, to give you an appreciation of how we're all working together, and how selfish it is to put yourself outside of that. And here's what it is to really be outside that.
I think that might be part of the reason the Tongans work so well together, because that was part of their culture before they got in the canoe.
Yeah, that's what they said, that they were two of the men that were interviewed from the 60s.
I love the premise for the book. I sure hope it shows kind of how I feel. I've never believed in Lord of the Flies. I read the book and seen the movies, and I just have never felt like people function like that. I've always felt the opposite. I feel like in our hardest times, it's human nature to come together and help each other. And you could find in the middle of a flood, you could find yourself helping the guy that robbed you down the street because you're going through this tremendous thing together. It's all of a sudden everybody's at the same level. And that's a belief I hold. It's not something that I think maybe anecdotally it might be held up by the way people behave, but I'm really curious to see how some research.
Well, it says that it's 200,000 years of human history that he kind of goes through, and he tries to find examples of Homo sapiens and working together and stuff. But it's got some
out of here.
Bye, Dee.
Go ahead, sure. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah, that's okay. Anyways, it's a lot of different things in it, but it looks kind of interesting. Yeah.
It is interesting. I'm flashing on Mutiny on the Bounty, and the group that took the boat and landed some island where they continued on, but that they were more like Lord of the Flies. In the end, it didn't. That group of pirates, or not pirates, they were by then because they mutinied. But anyway, they did not survive well, I guess.
Well, very interesting. What else we got, guys? I've got another article that Fred provided, which I think is very timely. If you're interested, I got through some of the article, but what it is basically is compare and contrast of all the different password managers that are available out there, and the inspiration was that LastPass has taken away that free tier. And so if you are going to pay for a password manager, then here are 6 considered best password manager alternatives. And they go through the pros and cons of each one of them in pricing. And so if you aren't aware of these options, here's an article that is, I think Fred has already stuck it in our chat for the meeting.
Yeah.
An iDrop News article. If you're looking for a replacement for LastPass, keep in mind there isn't a real good replacement for all the features of LastPass without paying. And that's kind of the premise that this article has, is that if you're looking to pay LastPass, maybe you should look at what else is out there. And somebody, I think it was Paul that brought it up last week about OnePass. OnePass is the number 1 on this list. So I found it.
Yeah, that's what we got.
Yeah, you're on OnePass. You had a consultant that was recommending it.
Yeah, my sister-in-law, my tech consultant. She lives with us.
Truthfully, my experience with this kind of stuff has big gaps in it. I adopted the LastPass a couple of years ago, and long before that, I used to use a thing called RoboForm. But I am not somebody that has sat down and compare and contrasted all these different password managers. And the article actually right at the beginning of it does make a point that out of all of these, LastPass has had a lot of press for different problems that they have had with security. So now they're taking away features unless you pay for them, and they have a history of some security issues. Maybe that's enough to prompt you to look somewhere else for a password manager. Anyway, I'll put the link on today's website. Is anybody using any password manager other than... Oh, there's RoboForm. Number 6. Didn't even know it was a thing still.
Remember that German couple? They sent us some emails of this reply.
How are they doing? They're in Germany?
Yeah, lockdown.
Anyway, Scott, I use LastPass.
Go ahead, Bill. I'm sorry. I was just being a smartass.
Yeah, I know. I'm using LastPass, and I'm totally hooked on it. I mean, I use it, when you go to a new site or need a new password, it generates one for you. And I have no hope other than to look it up, open it up, and try to copy it if I didn't have LastPass. It's just, it's almost indispensable to me now.
Bill, I got to agree with you. I have gotten completely hooked on LastPass. I've done the same thing. I generate passwords all the time. I probably 80% of the places I go now I couldn't get into if I wasn't using LastPass, because the passwords are uniquely different and difficult to remember. They're nonsensical. You know what I'm talking about. They're just nonsensical garbage.
And I'm only using the the medium strength ones. I don't know. God help me what the full strength ones would look like. I mean, it'd be 50 characters long, all mixed up.
You know what I think we should do is we should come up with our essential list of features that we expect from a password manager, and then go out looking for the one that satisfies that criteria. Because I've learned so much from LastPass that I would want in a different password manager if I switched. I was going to say one of those features is, I don't know if you looked at it, Bill, but you can ask it to generate a password based on the how complex it is, would be based on things like whether it's readable. So you can dial in the complexity of the password based on whether you can read it easily or if you can say it easily. Like, those are two different criterias. And I've played a little bit around, because when you look at it on the screen, you're like, well, that just looks like a nonsense password. But then you start reading it out loud like you're shouting it across the room. And it's so much easier to shout than one of the other nature where you're doing. Okay, now it's that. What's that called that you do the ampersand, the and sign? Now do that, and the one that looks like a star, right? Versus CLH5. And so LastPass has done a good job of being able to dial in to generate passwords that follow a flow like that, for lack of better terminology.
There you go. I don't know. I have all of my social insurance number, my healthcare numbers, my driver's license stuff. All of them are in there now. So, and the problem is that they split off the iPhone, and that's where I use those numbers. People ask me, you need to fill something in, and I look it up on the iPhone. Now I can't do that. So I'm almost hooked into paying the monthly charge. Cheryl will have disagreed. She doesn't use it at all.
Well, and when they made this switch, I told you guys I intentionally chose the desktop versions, because this is what the switch they made is. If you're not paying for LastPass, you had to choose whether you're going to use it on your mobile device or you're going to use it on your desktop devices. But they weren't going to let you do both for free, because they're nudging you into buying service, and so that's how they were going to nudge you. They were just going to take some of the features away for you. And I still value it most on the desktop, but I'll be damned if I'm not out in the wild going, oh, what was that password? And I can't look it up because I didn't choose to use the mobile version.
Well, I have the misfortune to associate with women that have a memory for numbers. And Cheryl is one of them. The other one is my ex-wife. And I swear to God, she bought a brand new Carmen Ghia in 1972, and I'll bet money that she can recite that damn serial number right now. How the hell do you do that? I don't understand. And my ex-wife is a complete math phobe. She doesn't understand numbers at all, like mathematics, but she can remember numbers.
Well, I can't remember.
She's got your number.
Yeah, she had my number.
There were passwords in my head that I don't remember now because I trusted them to LastPass because it made it so easy.
Exactly.
Well, if any of you find yourselves working with other password managers, Paul, I'd be really interested in hearing about your experiences with 1Password. But if there's Fred, you're using one, aren't you? Were you using RoboForm? Somebody, I think, was using RoboForm. Still, I haven't used it in years.
No, I'm using LastPass.
Oh, you're on LastPass as well. So yeah,
and
I think
the thing I got from that article was it starts off and says the LastPass has something like 10 holes in it.
Well,
security holes.
Yeah, I don't think they did a good job. I think they've all been patched, all the security issues. Vulnerabilities recently been found with at least 7 different types of tracking software. So if your vulnerabilities are tracking, maybe that's a little different than security.
Who's doing the Darth Vader thing?
I think that's Fred.
That's me.
I am your father.
It looks like Linda left the meeting, but she put something into the chat where she said, I had LastPass also. I took it out after a hack. I don't have anything now.
Okay. Well, Linda, come back and tell us what you're talking about.
On my, I use Google Chrome as my browser all the time. And a lot of it keeps giving me a message, do you want me to save this password? And I usually tell it no. And then it will tell me, I have a couple of things that I don't mind it knowing my password to. And it tells me that I have a list of 20 that have been compromised and that I should go to my Google account. And I have gone to it and seen what passwords they're saving and things like that. So
This is another feature we want in a password manager, is one that looks at your passwords and then compares them to because there are public databases out there of all these hacks. And and in the public database, it will have your email address and associated password. And so a good password manager can go and check those lists and see how your passwords are stacking up and advise you in the ones that need to be changed.
I think, Scott, you'll find that people who don't use a password manager have at max maybe 3 or 4 or 5 passwords that they keep reusing all the time, which is just as dangerous as having a password manager with a hole in it.
I would hope at this point in the computer club that we all understand that as inconvenient as it is, as painful as it is to have a different password for everything, that is the most secure way to do things. And you're really leaving yourself open to a compromise if you're using the same password everywhere. It's just common knowledge in hackers to take that info and use it somewhere else to see if they can get in, especially if they know what you're doing. And I used to use the example of you may enjoy a quilting site to get patterns for your latest creation, but you don't want to use your bank password on the quilting site because they've definitely not invested as much time into security as your bank has. And if somebody wants to get into your bank account, they're going to get into your quilting account first because that's the easy one. And then they're going to use your password and username from there on your bank account to try and get it.
That's another nice feature about LastPass is they will alert you that you're using the same password in more than one place. It tells you should do something about that.
Yeah, that's absolutely a great feature. See, we need to start a feature list, Bill. We got to put together a feature list of what we expect from a password manager. Yeah,
you got a mouse. You got a mouse in your pocket?
No, you're part of the we. You're just denying.
Oh,
it.
I see.
When I say we, I mean you and me, buddy.
Oh, I see.
We use the term woo.
Woo?
Instead of we. Woo should do that. Meaning
we who. Meaning we who. It's a contraction.
Yeah. I just typed in, password Google, and it's got a password checkup that I can do. It tells me that I have 119 sites and apps that I can search my password for inside Password Manager. So.
Well, whoopee-doo.
I don't know if that's a feature you want, that it will list all of the sites that they have,
Yeah, I think, is it LastPass that will actually take you to that site? Like, you get a report of what's your security level. Well, actually, you get a report on your security level every time you visit a site. It'll tell you whether you're well, it'll tell you if it's a poor secured password. Like, it'll flash, it'll change the icon color, and it'll draw your attention to a notification. And the notification will be, you have a lousy password on this website. You should change it.
Well, the one indication of how useful it is I haven't gone back to my journal and looked up my password page in about a month.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I think there's a good argument for maybe you want to be paying for a service to do this for you. I mean, maybe there's some real security in making somebody that's making a business that's made a business out of this in charge of that kind of stuff instead of a hodgepodge. I don't know. I every so often have to rewrap my head around this stuff because it's always growing, it's always changing. I'm not scared of having apps in the cloud, whereas 5 years ago I wouldn't recommend it at all. But now we all have fast enough internet everywhere that it's not inconceivable to think that you could be editing videos and documents and all that could all reside out in the cloud, and the device in front of you is nothing more than a window to those applications. Opinions change based on technology as it grows.
I find the challenge is to remember the password for those in the cloud kind of things.
LastPass.
That's what I think.
LastPass.
Well, and I, Scott, were trying to figure out my Google thing, and I had a page full of all these different Google passes I have used. Took us a while to find the right one.
Well, and you know what helped with your situation, Mom, which is really interesting because a lot of these websites now are doing it. I think Google does it often. I think Microsoft does it as well. Is for a secondary type of authentication when you can't remember your password. If you're on a computer, the actual hardware and the browser that you've signed into this service before, that's a fingerprint that they will use to verify that you've had access before from this location. It's kind of like the old, are you calling from the number you're reporting with the phone company? Are you using your computer and the web browser you've used in the past to get to Amazon? Because I don't think we would be able to change your password if we hadn't been on your particular computer using that particular web browser that had been signed in before. It's neat that they can do that kind of stuff.
Well, thank you, Scott, for helping.
You're welcome. Hey, you know what? We've kind of wandered away from the recommendations, but I just thought of another TV series that we just recently watched that was very interesting, called The One. It's a new sci-fi on Netflix. It's English, and the premise is that some scientists figured out how to match with your soulmate based on chemical reactions and some tracking DNA that they can do, but they're able to upload your DNA into a large database and find your soulmate. This is another one of those shows where the premise is really stupid, but the show is great. What the show is great for is the social repercussions of such a system. How does that affect our lives when there's a whole culture of people out there doing like 23andMe, and they can find the person that they are guaranteed true happiness with, right? Like you get an email back saying this is the person that you could spend the rest of your life in deep love with. And how does that affect you if you're married, if you're on some other course? I mean, maybe you're training for a religious order, or maybe you thought that you were your sexual tendencies were for a different gender. All these things are coming up in this show. We've actually finished it. We watched the entire. We just binged through the entire season, and so I think the premise is really dumb. I don't believe that you could do this. I think soulmates are a very abstract concept, and what they mean to me aren't the same thing as what they mean to you. At the same time, the social repercussions of something like this happening are very real. And that's what keeps the show very, very interesting, is how does society deal with people that are behaving in this manner, where there's a whole culture of this. And it's not a question of whether this could be your soulmate. In this world, that is your soulmate. What are you going to do about it now? Maybe you're already married with kids. Maybe if you're married with kids, maybe you shouldn't have taken the test. You should have just stayed away.
Considered yourself already happy.
Yeah, you're already happy. Don't push, don't rock the boat.
You're happy.
So I'd like to add that to our list as well. I think it's definitely worth watching. Just maybe don't watch the trailer for it, because you'd be like, this is really dumb. Why would I watch this?
To pass the pandemic.
Yeah.
So, Scott, I started watching one on, I don't know, on Streamios where I saw it, was Made for Love. I just barely started watching, but I read the write-up on it, and it sounded pretty interesting. It's a sci-fi type thing. Anybody that's out scouting looking for interesting stuff might want to try it. I have no recommendation for it. I've only watched the first 15 minutes of it.
Is it a movie?
It's a series.
A title like that makes it sound like it's about sex dolls.
Close, I believe.
Boy, Scott.
Made for love.
Well, it's something. Some girl escapes out of a relationship and winds up with her estranged father, who just happens to have one of those. I believe is how this sort of comes about. But the write-up was pretty interesting.
It's 2021. It's new. It looks like it's being released on Paramount Plus. I've brought up the synopsis here. It's drama, fantasy, sci-fi, comedy, and the write-up reads like this: 30-something Hazel Green tries to escape a suffocating marriage until she realizes her tech billionaire husband has implanted a revolutionary tracking device, the Made for Love, in her brain.
Wow.
Did she get a vaccine? Is that what happened?
Right. You'd think if he was a tech billionaire, he would have already just been able to track her phone.
Some of the sci-fi doesn't make sense because we already can think, why didn't they do this? Why, I just finished The Expanse, and I'm floundering here what will be next, because that was awfully good. They use bullets in that, which I thought was so weird, or something like a bullet.
Yeah. I think we talked about that last time, Mom. I actually really appreciate that about that kind of sci-fi. To me, that's like dirty, gritty sci-fi. It's like Blade Runner type sci-fi, Philip K. Dick type sci-fi, where it's not a pretty future. It's a future that's built right. It's 5 minutes in the future. It directly descends from where we are right now.
Out in outer space.
Yeah. It just
right.
We're still the miserable, short-sighted, dangerous people we've always been. We just now have spaceships, and we're doing the same garbage out in space.
Yeah, that's what I got out of it too. Sad.
It's not Star Trek, and I really want Star Trek.
Because that's real.
No, it's not. But it'd be so awesome if it was real. All of a sudden, nobody was concerned about making money, and they were just concerned about discovery. We would be a better place, I think.
Yeah.
Well, what else do we got? I got one more topic that I thought some of you might find interesting. LG is getting out of the smartphone business. Some of you have probably owned LG phones. They're actually really good equipment. I have found myself on occasion recommending an LG phone. I haven't owned one personally, but I've had customers that have been very satisfied with the South Korean company, but they can't seem to compete in a world dominated by Apple and Samsung. And so they're pulling out their whole mobile. Here's the part of this story that I found so fascinating, is that they are getting out of something that's just crazy, like mobile phones, so that they can get into a more realistic market area, such as electric vehicles, robots, artificial intelligence, and smart home devices. That's where we are in 2021. A lucrative company like LG has decided that smartphones aren't going to work for them, so they're going to concentrate on things that really matter, like artificial intelligence and smart home items, electric cars. I just think that whole premise wouldn't fly at all 10 years ago. We would be reading out of a science fiction magazine. That would not be a headline in a press release, or that wouldn't be a point in a press release. That would be some point in a sci-fi novel. Where I don't know if you're following my line of thought, but smartphones are so passé. There's no market, there's no money to be made in them. The leaders have already, it's like trying to make another cola against Pepsi and Coke. It's already been summed up. Anybody making cola is just making pennies. So they're going to go on to more realistic places to make money, like electric cars, in
Wait a minute,
artificial
Scott.
intelligence.
Hold
Yes,
on
sir.
a minute.
Yeah.
There might be a market for a new cola since the Republicans are going to quit drinking it. Except for Trump, who hides it behind his phone when he's
Sure.
not getting pictures taken.
That's awesome about the Trump aspect of that threat. I completely disregarded till just this moment. He's the Diet Coke connoisseur, isn't he?
Yes.
He had a button on his desk so that he could call in Diet Cokes.
That's one of the first things that Biden got taken out of the Oval Office was the Coke button.
I think what ego. He wanted a button on his desk for something. That's what he wanted. He's the president of the United States. There should be a button on this desk.
I
If
think
you're
they
gonna push
need
a button, I would rather it was for Diet Coke than nuclear bombs.
That's right.
maybe that was the trade-off.
Yeah.
I think that's his sense of humor. I think the button, there ought to be a button on this desk because I'm the president. What can I use the button for? And then he'd invite people in to have a meeting, and he'd freak them out by hitting the button every so often.
That sounds like
but the butler showed up with a Diet Coke every time he pushed it.
That's right.
He did it to impress the people that came to see him. He'd push the button, and the door would spring open, and the guy came in with an ice cold Diet Coke.
Yeah. It's too bad he's not more creative. A pneumatic tube would have been really cool. You could hit the button and
There you go.
it just pops up on the desk.
I don't know. You guys, the States have Staples stores, don't they? Staple products?
I think some are still around.
Yeah, well, years ago, they used to have an ad, and they had this great big red button that you could add in their ads, and you hit it, and it would say that was easy.
That's right.
And you could buy those. You could buy them and have. And every time I heard of Trump and his button, his Coke button, I thought of that. That's easy. That was easy button.
That was the image I thought.
It's better. It's better to train your dog to fetch a beer out of the refrigerator, though.
I showed my daughter how to do that. She got him trained, so he would bring a beer.
That was our one grand puppy. Yeah. They were together, daughter and puppy, on a fire watch tower, and she was training him to do all kinds of things. And the one that she did get, there was a cloth hung on the door, and he would go over and open the fridge and knew how to pick up the can of beer and bring it to her. So
I hope she concentrated on that after potty training. Just keep your priorities straight. Otherwise, she might have a drinking problem.
And in the terms of hunting dogs, you want to make sure he has a soft mouth.
Yeah.
That's right.
I can think of a few dogs that, if they were given the opportunity, would be drinking the beer out of the fridge.
Yeah, just chomp it and drink it.
Yeah.
If you have a hunting dog, you should never play tug with it.
Right.
Probably no dog you should play tug with.
Scott, you talked about the drawer, and you just mentioned LG. Yeah. Every time we went to the States, I would try to buy a track phone or, go at Net 10, all those different cell phones that you can get real cheap at Walmart. So I have, I think, 4 LG flip phones. Bill has at least 3 Palm Pilots, BCom. What's the other one? The one that's going.
Pocket PCs.
No.
Bill's
we have
talking.
two Blackberries.
Blackberries, that's what I was talking about. Blackberry. We have Blackberry phones. We have Blackberry things. There's a stack, and all of them have 1 or 2 batteries, spares, and chargers, and the whole big bag full of them. Yeah. Well, my granddaughter's the day she won a little red one, so she now has a little phone.
There's the bag.
That's the bag from the drawer of all the LG phones.
That's it.
Yeah.
I have a funny little cell phone story, because how oftentimes you'll see children, that are young, under 3 years old, and they'll be sitting around the kids or the young people that are the parents, and all the parents will be on these little phones, and the kid will be looking around for what to do. And we realized that one little girl, Brooklyn, she had a domino that she'd taken out of the thing, and it was her cell phone. She would push all the little buttons and talk on the cell phone to herself. The domino.
Oh, Jim, you just gave me flashbacks to my kids when they were younger. There was a certain age that I gave each one of them a cell phone. So Bibiana didn't have a cell phone when her sister had a cell phone. Well, everybody else has cell phone. So we would try and do things like restrict what they were doing, like using tablets or using computers. We're like, all right, we're going over to Abby's house. No tablets or computers. And very quickly, we were made aware that means everyone in the family can bring a cell phone, except me, Poppy, because I don't have a cell phone. So I'm the only one without a screen when we go over to Abby's, because you won't let me bring my tablet. So you get over to Abby's house, and Mom's got a cell phone she's digging through, and Pop's got a cell phone he's digging through, and even Sister's got a cell phone she's digging through, and Bibiana's sitting there going, "You guys suck. This isn't fair."
Okay, I got a small technology story. I knew that we had crossed into a different era when I all of a sudden realized that if you took a picture of a little kid, they immediately ran over to you and wanted to see the picture.
Oh,
yeah. And before that, you had to wait for the pictures to come back from developing. All of a sudden, I realized, well, we are in a different time zone now. I mean, it was just that one moment I saw that kid run over, pull a hand down, and look at the back of the screen.
It sure made them better posers, though, because they got the feedback quicker and they realized what was happening. So a lot of them. I've met
not
kids.
Only not only that, you get better pictures now. Before, like if I look at the pictures taken when I was a little kid, most of the pictures taken were of family when somebody came to visit, and you were all stood up against the wall or against the garden. And the person taking the picture was about 40 feet back, and it was what I call the standard family picture. It just, everybody's in a row, all standing there, click, and that's it. That was it. That was the picture for the month. That was it.
Right.
Documentation.
And now you take 1,000 photos knowing at least 3 of them are going to be great.
Well, and you can't find them either.
Well, and now we have so much storage capacity and bandwidth to put it up in the cloud. You take 1,000 pictures and you don't even bother to delete the 907 that you don't want. You just leave them sitting out there.
Well, and then you can't remember the password to find them in the cloud anyway. So I'm waiting for my handheld transponder. I just think that will solve all these problems.
The handheld transponder, what are you referring to?
From Beam Me Up, Scotty.
Oh, okay.
It's also in the Expanse. They all had handheld transponders. They could do anything. They could map all of the solar systems, and they could shoot, messages. They can take pictures, everything. They could almost heal themselves by their handheld transponders. This is really good.
We were talking about the Expanse being kind of an extension of reality as we know it. So it's dirty, it's got bullets. Well, the phones were really, what you're describing was really interesting as well, because as you're looking at the different classes, people in the Expanse, people that don't have as much money have broken what'd you call it? I didn't realize it was called a transponder.
I think it's transponder, I think was the word they used.
But we would see somebody using a broken transponder where it had a cracked screen, even though it was projecting a holographic screen. Their side screen would have a crack going through it. And they'd just be making it work the same way we do with our cell phones right now. You'd never see a cracked screen on Star Trek. Nobody would put up with that line. They would chuck it in the I've lost the name of it now. The machine that builds everything. What is that called? The
Computer? No.
No, they
Robot?
had machines that would build food. It would build electronics. It would build anything it had a computer schematic for. Replicators.
Was it the replicator?
Thank you, Jim. That was what I was looking for. Replicator. They would just chuck the broken screen into the replicator recycler and get another phone out of the replicator. It wouldn't tolerate a broken screen.
Or use it for fuel in Back to the Future in their Lamborghini.
Fun.
Exactly. Well, guys, I am running out of time. I have to let you guys go. Is there any last minute things we need to share with each other before we call this to an end? Any?
Cheryl got her COVID shot today.
Yay, Cheryl!
Is it 1 or 2 that you have to have?
Number
This
1.
is my first one of the Pfizer, and when he gave me my slip that said, you will be contacted in 16 weeks, because that's when I'm supposed to get my second one. They've done 4-month interval in our province.
No, I was thinking about it, and that 3-week minimum you're talking about must be the thing that I'm just hearing when I'm thinking of these time limits. And it's not, it's about being ready for the next shot. It's not necessarily how long you can be ready before you get this shot. This is the first time I've heard a like a maximum. It sounds like they've pushed out your date all the way 4 months because that's still effective.
Yeah.
I don't know. They have different reasons for choosing the 4 months, but the biggest one is so that we can get more people done with one shot. In my
I think
they might bring that up shorter because I am immune suppressed, so they're still looking at all the science, but yeah, we'll see.
Carol and I are going on the 23rd this month.
The 4-week or the 16 weeks, I think, is based on what they think their supply is going to be, and that the supply that is going to get all the people vaccinated once, which is your really maximum, your first really good shot of protection. The 3-week one is the minimum. There's no point in getting one before 3 weeks are up because there's no booster effect until you wait for that long.
You still haven't developed any antibodies, and so there's no reason to even get into it.
Yeah, there's no effect if you get it ahead of 3 weeks. And I know for a fact that these limits are going to change because the vaccine is becoming more and more available. Yeah, the United States is going to max out. They're going to have surplus here pretty soon, and they're going to start distributing it. The companies are going to be able to supply other countries, and our supply is going to increase, and we'll hear in another month or so that it's going to open right up. I know it will.
The other thing he said was that I'm not allowed to have another vaccine like the pneumonia or any of the other ones.
That's interesting.
For 4 weeks and 2 weeks before my next one. So he asked me, have you had a vaccination in the last 14 days? So I can say no. And I have to be able to answer that question before they'll give me my next COVID shot. They also warned me, don't have another vaccination for the next 4 weeks. 2 weeks prior, 4 weeks after.
Do you think that's unique to you, Cheryl?
No, I think that's
no. They told me the same thing.
Oh, okay.
That's what our health people are saying.
Oh, that's interesting. I was going to ask the same question if that was unique to your situation.
They don't know for sure, but they think the other vaccines will interfere with this one. They conflict.
Oh yeah, I've heard that.
So no shingles, none of those other ones. And I'm up to date on all the other ones. So yeah.
Well, very good. I'm glad to hear it. I'm sorry I have to say goodbye. I have work coming up, and I've got to get out of here. As I've said in the past, you guys are welcome to stick around and talk to each other, but I've got to go.
Oh, no, you're the cement that hold us together.
Oh, thank you.
We just talk about you, Scott. Well,
it's good to know you talk about interesting, creative topics.
Well, I have some real interesting things to share.
Mom
Scott.
is not allowed to be in that conversation. Mom is only allowed to be on screen when I'm on screen.
All right, tech on, Scott.
I'm just kidding. Mom's a great person to talk to. You'd be lucky to talk to my mom.
Yeah, right.
See you guys. Love you, Mom.
Bye.
Bye.
Love you.
See you guys.
Bye.
Tech on. See you, Fred. That was the San Carlos Computer Club, brought to you by me, Scott Stimson from International Computer Solutions. If you're looking for computer help out there on the internet, I'd appreciate it if you try giving me a shot. I can get into your system remotely, help you over the phone, whatever it may be. You can get help by emailing remote@internationalcs.net. Any questions or interest in our group, you can find our website at scclub.org, where I host links to the YouTube videos that we create and the podcast. You can find the podcast anywhere you get your podcast. Just search for the San Carlos Club. Until next week, I hope you guys have an awesome time and explore new tech. Until